Hey everyone, I am welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. You know what I want you to do if you are watching us. I want you to hashtag live and let me know where you are watching from. And if you are watching the replay, I want you to hashtag replay. And again, let me know where you're watching from. You'll know you're watching live because it'll say live at the top of your screen in a little red box. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're watching, share this video to the groups. I want to welcome my guest. I am so excited to have Tammy. Tammy is a former colleague of mine, and she is really an amazing therapist, licensed social worker. And so I brought her on not just because of her clinical experience, but also her lived personal experience. Tammy is diagnosed with ADHD, and she did not get that diagnosis until older. And so we're going to talk about adult ADHD today. So everybody, welcome Tammy. We're going to take a moment to share it to groups. I'm going to actually share it to Tammy's page. So give me 1 second. As people are joining, I see a couple people are joining us. Go ahead and share the broadcast. To a friend. Okay. So I'm going to share this to Tammy's page so her family can watch her do amazing work. There you are. Okay, I see you guys joining, but I don't see any live. So hashtag live if you're watching us live. Let me know where you're watching from. Hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. And again, let me know where you are watching us from. All right. So we are joining live today with, again, Tammy. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, officially give us your credentials and all of that stuff, and we'll jump into this interview. Go ahead and talk to me, Tammy.
Hi. Well, of course, you and I have known each other for a while, and I've been in this business for a while. I've been doing mental health therapy for 25 years, and I am officially a licensed certified social worker. That is my title. And I've worked with all ages, all issues, doing this for a while, especially in an outpatient setting. Um, I've seen a little bit of everything. Not an expert on everything, but I've seen a little bit of everything.
Yes, you have seen a lot. You saw a lot when we worked together, and I
Yes.
think I worked there for maybe a year, maybe. So I can imagine in the course of 25 years, you have a
Mhm.
wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience. And so again, thank you so much for joining us. We have
You
a
are
couple people
welcome.
here that's letting us know they're here. Hey, from Arkansas and Atlanta, welcome. Go ahead and um, share this video if you're watching. So we're going to get into this. If you are watching from YouTube, let us know where that you're watching from YouTube. We usually don't have a lot of comments from the YouTube world. So Tammy, we're talking about ADHD. How would you define ADHD for people who don't know kind of what it is? I think there are a lot of people who have heard of it. Almost everyone has heard of it, but there's not
Right.
always clarity of what it is. Can you talk to
Right.
us about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of confusion because, when you think ADHD, you picture a child, maybe elementary school age, jumping on a couch when they're supposed to be sitting down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, hyperactivity is part of ADHD, but it presents differently in different people. So, we have the common symptoms that people are aware of, which is where the diagnosis gets its name, attention deficit. So having problems there. And the personality and the environment can either help or
Mm-hmm.
hinder the functioning of the person with the diagnosis. But I wasn't diagnosed, um you know not to say my age, but I was in elementary school back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some memories of times that I would get into trouble for, you know, not sitting still and talking out of turn and different things like that. But ADHD is a lot more than that. And of course, the diagnosis in adults may look different than the diagnosis in children.
Mhm.
That's, we can talk about a little bit later, but difficulty following instructions, difficulty finishing what you start,
Mm.
forgetfulness. And I mentioned, the child, stereotypical child jumping on the couch, but adults can have that hyperactivity piece, but it presents more like restlessness. And you'll see me
Mm.
today wiggle. I do everything I can to, and wiggling, even though, you have a parent or a teacher telling you, sit still. Sometimes moving helps the person with ADHD focus a little better.
Right.
It's not so, okay, I'm just going to do this, because then you're focused on staying still, not what you're trying to listen to.
Mhm.
Another symptom that goes, and I know you asked me to define it. I'm
Oh,
kind
you're
of talking
fine.
about the symptoms as well, but one of the symptoms that I see really, really, really prominently in some people, kids and adults, is the low tolerance to frustration. So you
Mm.
may see someone else, two people side by side, and one person may be patient or listening, and the other person may escalate when you look at like hyperactivity.
Yeah.
Okay. Or impulsivity. Well, impulsivity is not just behavior, it can be emotional impulsivity, and you
Mhm.
can have some mood swings. You can, when you're focused on something, again, kind of going back to the kids, but when there's something you enjoy, you can hyper focus, and that can
Mhm.
be positive. I mean, there are a lot of positive traits with ADHD. I really do. Like I said, I wasn't diagnosed until after till adulthood. My son, his teachers were saying to me almost word for word, many, many, many years later, to what my teacher said to my parents.
Mm.
So, and Nitra, do I call you Tanithria or do I call you?
Either way is fine.
I've always called you Nitra, and I was like, well,
Nature is absolutely fine.
okay. Um, but with that, I've I've had a few times in life where I would be talking just like I'm talking now, and boop, it just goes. It's like
Mm.
I can't remember what I was talking
But
about.
yeah.
And so, attention, focus, um, impatience, some of those you hear as negative. But I'd like to share the positive side as well.
Yeah, that's good. And I try to bring that up as well. I go, it's a difference. It's not necessarily has to be so considered so problematic. It's just learning how to do things differently.
I'm
Um,
glad you said that. Problematic. Well, I do diagnose people with ADHD, and I had always kind of suspected. Once I got in this field, I'd suspected, okay, that's probably it. But when my son, I think he was in second grade at the time, I saw him being sad.
mm,
And this was, I was like, something's got to give. If he started something and couldn't finish it and got maybe a lower grade at school, he was internalizing that and making
yeah,
himself. And I recall doing
doing the same.
similar
Mhm.
things when I was young.
Yeah.
And so I've had to stop and I've had to look at it and figure out, okay, what works for me.
I had Dr. Angel Gates on, I think the first episode of this season, and she was talking about seeing what helped her become a parent coach for ADHD. Um, was because she started to see some things with her children and she didn't want them to internalize. So I think that's a huge motivating factor for people when they are getting their kids diagnosed. What are some things that you see brings adults in? They'll say, okay, I did this and I figured I needed to get tested. What are those
Right.
things that prompt adults?
I think, I mean, just personally for me, I don't mind sharing, but I realized, I had, even though, again, the diagnosis in adulthood, as a child, I had that energy. I had that,
Mhm.
but it was, quote, the norm for me. I mean, I remember my mother has since passed away, but when she was a school teacher in elementary school, I'd go and she'd set up her room and I'd be doing like back handsprings down the hallway of the elementary school. So I had the hyperactive piece, but
Mhm.
I noticed it more. And let me give you a little side note. Growing up, I managed it and I didn't realize I had it. And I contribute that to my mom was a teacher. She was checking in with me. Are you
Mhm.
doing your homework? Have you done your homework? Did you finish this? And I had that. And I noticed even before I had my son in college, first time I
Mhm.
ever got an F in life was my first semester of college. And I didn't understand it because at my first semester, I think I took 4 classes,
Mhm.
2 A's and 2 F's.
Wow.
And I wasn't just not doing the work. It was like I was not, there were too many things going on for me. It was,
Mhm.
I was adjusting to being in college. I was adjusting to being, the person responsible for the outcome. And when I married my husband, he has ADHD as well. His is a little different. We can talk about that later. But it was like, okay, I managed mine. When I married him, I would feel like I would need to manage his, even though I didn't
Mm.
have to do that. But it's almost like a dance because there were pieces of him that complimented me, and there were pieces of him that, kind of triggered me. And then guess what? In 2007, 6, my son was born, and we have 3 people in my house, and all 3 of us are ADHD, but all 3 of us are different from one another. So it's unique to the person. There are the classic symptoms, and
Mhm.
if we need to talk about that more, we can. But I realized, oh, what I had done is not working any longer.
Mhm.
And then I had to really look at myself what ADHD was because, you had that, I had that stereotypical image in my
Right.
head. And I'm like, yeah, I was said as a kid, not necessarily now. But so again, going back, when you're experiencing some kind of difficulty, and for me, it was kind of, I had several balls in the air. I
Mhm.
was working and I had a child and a husband, and um, I got full, if I say that. So
Mhm.
without slowing down and saying, okay, this is for me as the spouse, this is for me as the mom. And sometimes it gets overwhelming. And I don't mind telling people I am medicated for ADHD. I can tell a difference. All medicines, I'm not a doctor, so I can't speak to that, but they, different people, different medicines. And, you know, I find that it has been very helpful for me.
Yeah. Can you speak to the difference with how ADHD looks with women versus men? Because
Mhm.
well, even girls and boys, however you want to say it, um, because ADHD is typically diagnosed higher in boys, and I think I've met more people as adults that said they didn't get a diagnosis until they were adults that were women, and they
Yeah.
often said I was really smart. So my grades were good. Um, I didn't act out in school. I knew how to behave. I never got diagnosed because I wasn't
Hmm.
hitting. So can you kind of talk about how those things look different for males versus
Absolutely.
females?
And to add to what you said, when you said I didn't get in trouble in school, or, and I had
Hmm.
good grades, I was smart, things like that. Um, one of the things that gets overlooked is there's different types of ADHD, and I didn't defined that earlier. But when you can have inattentive type, predominantly inattentive type, and that's, when someone has trouble paying attention,
Right, right,
but it's more that they feel the symptoms on the inside, and then they experience the behavior rewards or consequences for it. Like if you've got a boy in school and the boy is fighting, and I'm not saying just boys fight, but
right.
if you have a male child, it's the difference between men and women, girls and boys. And what what may bother me, my husband may not bat an eye at. And
Hmm.
so looking at that, looking at the differences, I think a lot of women, just as you said, have been overlooked. And it may
Hmm.
be a cultural thing. It may be, how people were raised. And, it's generational. And so, yes, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I was taught those things growing up. And, not everybody is. So I could control my behavior. Every now and then there was some impulsivity that got
Hmm.
me in trouble, but it wasn't malicious. It wasn't
Right.
bad. It was not supposed to do that. And again, I was born in the 70s. So, um, let me see. When I said personality, well, I don't everybody is unique. I don't want to stereotype men and
Hmm.
women,
Right, right.
but some of the things that present as ADHD in women may not be as the norm, but the same behaviors in men might be accepted as the norm. So
Mm.
I really do think that whoever, is having the conversation,
Yeah.
there's various things to look for rather than just a cookie cutter across the
Right.
board. This is what it is.
One of our viewers put in the comments that they were 60 when they were diagnosed. So think about how that can impact a person. And Miss Renee, you can feel free to jump on there if you're still watching us. Um, how that impacts growing up if you've internalized some of the things that, and then you go, oh, there's actually something else going on here. I'm
Mhm.
not irresponsible, or I'm not just stressed out, or whatever the thing is, and I think that's
Absolutely.
important that adults recognize some of the symptoms, and so that there is an understanding so that they can start getting the appropriate treatment and handling things the right way.
Right. And I don't, yes, I've done research, but I don't know all of the statistics. For me personally, the world has changed rapidly in the last 10 years. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't want to date myself, but, you know, learning to multitask, working virtually, doing different things can, really be difficult. But if the environment that you're in helps, like, again, I say my mom was a teacher. Well, there was a place for things. It was like,
Hmm.
okay, my dad was, I think my dad may have been the one I got my ADHD. Uh, it was like, go put your shoes up. Don't leave your shoes out. Go put your So it depends on the situation.
Right.
With me, I think being a strong-willed person, I was definitely that strong-willed child and adolescent, and I've gotten a little better as an adult, but I still, it's when you see something and you are engaged in something, you do it to the full extent.
Yeah.
And if there's something that you're not interested in, um, it's it's just chalked up to be, oh, well, that's not one of my interests. That's not one of my
Yeah.
activities. And, so it really takes some fine tuning. You can go, and I know I may be skipping ahead, but, there are A medical doctor can give an ADHD diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Licensed as a clinical social worker, I diagnose, and it could look different for each
Yeah.
person, even if they are both presenting with inattentive
Right.
ADHD or hyperactive or
Mm-hmm.
combined type. And
Um, so can you talk about how it shows up for people in their job, in their romantic relationships? I remember reading an article, and I thought it was the most insightful article about ADHD with adults, and it talked about um, how you're in love with someone and they don't do some of the things you ask them to do, but then they'll say I can't focus, but then you see them focusing on something that for you seems to be frivolous, and they are hyper focused, and how that person there the person they're in a relationship can feel very much like, oh, you don't want to do the thing I asked you to do, and say you
Mhm.
can't focus, but you actually can focus. So can you just talk about how some of the symptoms of ADHD can show up in work relationship or in work environments and in romantic
Right.
relationships?
Well, I think that seed is planted when you're really young,
Mm-hmm.
and how you respond, whether you internalize it and it impacts your self esteem, or you, in the work environment, let's say that your work is something repetitively and you do your job, same job over and over again, there's not much change. Well,
Mm-hmm.
someone could get bored with that. It doesn't mean they don't like their job, but they could get bored, which may cause them to kind of, you know, go somewhere else in their mind or daydream, and mistakes
Mm-hmm.
can happen. Um, my biggest, I think, struggle was trying to figure out, and I'm, just going to put myself out there, but I've also had trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes you look at it and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this something in
Right.
me responding because of my trauma? Because ADHD overlaps with different
Mm-hmm.
other
Absolutely.
different diagnoses. And that's another important thing, is to make sure that you're doing or you're getting a full assessment, not just, okay, you meet the criteria,
Mm-hmm.
here's your medicine. I think in my job, it structure was much better. It worked for me. Schedules, and I think adults, it's like, well, I'm an adult, I can do make my own schedule. Well, yeah, but are you going to be successful, and can you complete tasks? And um, for me, as far as the work, I'm 100% present when I'm talking with someone. It's afterwards reflecting back where, I may have gathered or focused on details that might not have been as big, and I
Mm-hmm.
may have missed a detail that was bigger. That's something I've had to really work at. But when I'm at work and I'm in an environment where I feel comfortable in, I tend to focus better. If I'm in an environment that is clean but maybe cluttered, sometimes that distracts me.
Yeah.
And so there's several different things that could affect your focus and attention, but again, it's unique to the job that you
Yeah.
do and what's going on.
Can you give some strategies that may help people um, at through, let's just say, work? What are some strategies that could help them to be more focused and less distracted?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I do and I encourage clients to do, and even friends, um, is to make lists. Use
Hmm.
calendars, make lists.
Yeah.
When you do that, you have a physical reminder of what you need to do. When I say list, you may make a list that's got 100 things that you need to do. Well, you may also get overwhelmed with that list of 100 things. So you may not even start it. And so with that, I would make a list and I would break that list, if it's large, into smaller,
Mm-hmm.
manageable pieces. For example, if I have, let's say I've got do the laundry, go to the grocery store, and wash the dog. Well, I may also need to do the dishes. I may also need to do a bunch of other things. But if I feel overwhelmed in a task, I have to take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
So, when for me, and from my experience working with clients, when you have a smaller list and you complete the three, then you can do three more
Mm-hmm.
and you can see yourself making progress. And I think that goes along with the ADHD, as well as kind of the self-confidence. And
Right.
you're able to, and for me, that's, I'm more of a visual learner than an
Mm-hmm.
auditory learner.
So what
So,
I hear is that first step is to give yourself the structure of what do I
mhm,
need to do that keeps it from getting so bogged up in
mhm,
your head, writing it all down, but also making it smaller so it's not overwhelming.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I had a coworker I worked with, and I'm not sure if she overlapped with you in the past, but she said, "How do you eat an elephant?" I'm like, "What?" She goes, "One bite at a time." And I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that makes sense." And
Yeah.
so if you do break it down, it feels more manageable. You can focus on specific things versus having a little bit of attention here, a little bit of attention there. Um, that's what tends to work for me. So, yes, list,
Hmm.
making a list. Declutter works for me. Um, there's pieces in my life that are cluttered, and there's pieces in my life that are not. So, if I have an environment where I feel comfortable, and that's without the clutter, then I'm gonna focus and function a little bit better.
Hmm. Okay. So declutter, getting things organized. I like to tell people, depending on what your learning style is, try to find things that are good for your learning style. For example, if
Absolutely.
you're a visual learner, a list or a poster or something on the wall will help you. If you're an auditory learner, you may want creating a song or having some kind of reminder or something that calms you down. And so
Yes.
finding what works for you specifically is important.
Absolutely. And anybody who knows me, I don't want to. This was my list. This is minding your mental health. ADHD. It was just a quick little thing, and I've got it stuck right here because I was doing this with you. And
Yeah.
so that helps. And also things that you can see. One of the struggles that I had as the pandemic and things went more virtual is out of sight, out of mind. And so if
Mm,
I could see it and it would remind me it was fine, but if it was in the computer in a file and not like in
right.
a form, and I printed out a lot of different ADHD things, I could have looked at them on the computer, but something I can put my hands on works for me. And one of the problems that I've had is just trying to kind of adjust to doing what works for me, but also doing what is time efficient or, the most
Mm.
efficient.
Now we have a question here. Someone says, I'm late to the podcast, but how can an adult go and get tested? So she said she's been trying to go through the process and hasn't, I guess, received a formal diagnosis. And so she's
Okay.
wanting to know what's the process of getting
Okay.
tested for an adult.
Well, the first thing I would do, and this is what I did when I got my diagnosis, I went to my primary care physician. My PCP knew me better than any, other professional. And I said, my son has been diagnosed with this. And we did the same with my son. But I said, I believe I need to get tested. Well, my husband did the same thing. And he and I both got responses that, oh, yes, you're very ADHD. There's not actually a one specific test. There are assessment tools I would encourage people not to just go digging on the internet, because how you interpret something might
Mhm.
interrupt, the purpose. So go to your primary care, ask them to refer you to it could be a psychiatrist, it could be a psychologist. When you go and get wherever it is, if you go to a clinic, or you meet with a person, a professional, the evaluation they do is is based on those core symptoms: focus, attention, distraction. And I remember, and I'm not sure if anybody does this anymore, I didn't do it in my diagnosing, um, but there was, okay, every time you see the light, push the button.
Mm.
And so it sounds simple, but when you get into it, it's like, oh, did I do that? Do that? Did I do that? And
Mhm.
so there are recall, assessments, if you can remember something that was told to you. And again, this sounds pretty generic, so I want to re-emphasize, everything is not ADHD.
Mhm.
There could be um, a person who presents as kind of restless and moving around, but maybe it's anxiety. And
Right.
so PCP first, go to a mental health professional that can help you understand and diagnose. If you are diagnosed with it, this is one of the positives. Once you know, oh, this is how
Mhm.
I work, this is how I function, and it doesn't mean I'm broken or I'm bad, it means I'm different. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things that and I'm going to say this, in fifth grade, it's one of the things that impacted me very negatively, but I've learned from it, and I've taken that to kind of fuel my fire to
Mhm.
do what I need to do. I had a teacher, and she was asking the class, okay, everybody, we're in fifth grade. Can someone tell me how you can follow along when you're reading and not lose your place? Well, I wasn't an answer. I was one, oh, please don't call me. But
Mhm.
on that particular day, I was like raising my hand. So she called on me, and I said, well, for me, what works is I follow along with my finger. If you're a teacher and you're hearing this, please don't ever do this. What she said to me was, Tammy Austin, which was my maiden name, Tammy Austin, we are in fifth grade. We don't follow along with our finger.
Mm.
What I would, even as an adult, if I'm not 100% focused on what I'm reading, I can read the words, but I may not comprehend what the piece is telling me. And
Yeah.
so, working with adults or kids, it's okay. Stop. Those, again, list small chunks. And if you read a paragraph, ask yourself, what did that say? What
Yeah.
did I take away from that? And I noticed, if I'm too concerned about, wow, it's kind of small writing, I'm focused on the writing, not what I'm taking in and
Right.
comprehending. And so I think that's a big piece of it.
So I think what I just heard was there are things that may help you. And even if you think, oh, I shouldn't have to do that, do what works for you and don't worry about if you're in the fifth grade. Or,
Well,
I'm an adult. I don't have to make that list. Make the list. And I
uh-huh.
think lists are good even if you don't have a diagnosis of ADHD. But I think it really is important that people understand, hey, my brain may function slightly different, and I'm going to use what works for me,
Mhm.
and you can still be very successful by using the tools. So if you're an adult
Absolutely.
and you need to follow along with your finger, follow along with your finger. Do what
Well,
works
and
for you.
and just this is something that I came up with. There may be other people who do this, but um, when I was in high school, I was in a class, and I'm not going to mention the class, but it was not my favorite class, and it was a tough class. Well, the teacher in the class taught off, I'm dating myself, what is it, the overhead projector that
Hmm.
projects, and she would put the notes on there. Some of what she tested on was not in the textbook, it was
Hmm.
in her notes. So what I would do is I got to the point where I would just take notes, because again, I'm a visual learner, and when she's doing this, I didn't have like a handout to go to follow
Right.
along. So I would take notes. I'd get bored taking
Mm.
notes. I'd get bored with the subject that of the class, and I started missing things. So, one of the little tools that I came up with, and again, somebody else may do this, I'm not owning it, but I went and got some pens. Same pen, different colors. And what I would do is I would take notes. And when I felt myself kind of drifting and not taking it in, not paying attention, I would change colors. And once I did that, to me, I know I wasn't starting over, but it was fresh, starting new.
Hmm.
And so that's ways that a way that I broke things down into chunks.
No, that's really smart. It's just a small change, but it could help to keep you focused.
Mhm, mhm. And I mentioned
Oh,
the
go ahead.
pens, Nita. I just want to
Mhm.
say, um, you could do that with anything. But
Yeah.
for me, I enjoyed certain pens. And I know people have their favorite pens that they write with. And so having that in multiple colors, it didn't change my writing instrument, it changed the color.
Right.
So that was helpful.
So someone else said they use different color pens to take notes as
Oh,
well. So,
great. Great.
um,
Congratulations.
do symptoms decrease as you get older?
Medically, I don't know. And the reason I want to kind of add to that is other mental and physical health things may
Mhm.
play a role in that. So, yes, I have had my own trauma. And so, as I get older, age, other mental health issues,
Mhm.
other physical health issues. I've recently gone through breast cancer, and today, I'm cancer free, thankfully. But
Yes.
whatever medication you're taking, whatever,
Mhm.
treatment you're doing, all of that can impact, your cognitive ability. And to go a step further, I've had brain surgery. I had brain surgery in 2021 where they did have to cut into my frontal lobe.
Mm.
So yeah, I've noticed my symptoms more after the brain surgery, and just getting older, going into another room and thinking, why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I looking for? So I think we get better at managing our
Mm.
symptoms as we get older, and we have to, like you said, we have to find what works for us.
Someone asked a question. Angela Wims says, "Are there natural food or supplements that can help with symptoms? So, are there dietary things that could help?"
Yes, but I'm not the expert on that, so I can't speak to that. I have worked with a child who had a medical professional in the family, and sh- they talked about red food coloring. Well, I love like cherry starburst and different
Hmm.
flavors that are red, but the mom, being a nurse, knew more of the medical side of that and how the red dye chemical. I'm not saying red dye causes
Hmm.
problems. I'm saying, that's just one example. So I would
Right.
encourage someone, if they're wanting to do more of the natural, there's a lot of research out there. And again,
Hmm.
the place you can start is with your primary care physician, and they can help you decide, okay, do I need to take a next step and be evaluated?
Right.
Because, my life didn't change when I got the diagnosis. It, I was still me. I
Yeah.
just had to figure out, okay, so if my difficulties are getting distracted, You can see the wall behind me. It's fairly bare. Well, because even doing virtual stuff, I might get distracted by something that's behind
Mm.
me. So I think ultimately there's plenty of books out there. And I'm not, Barkley, Russell Barkley is a wonderful resource. And he has this book, When an Adult You Love is ADHD.
I'm going to
Well,
put that in the comments. When an
mhm.
adult you love has ADHD.
When an Adult You Love has ADHD, and it's by Russell A. Barkley, PhD. And he's done stuff for adults as well as kids. But, you can look at how ADHD, and I want to speak to something that I saw in there. Um, we can be distracted and not realize we're distracted.
Mm-hmm.
I about fell out when I read it, and I'm not sure if it was in this book or one of the other ones. It may have been in, um, I thought I had, oh, here it is. Um, Hallowell and Ratley, Driven to Distraction. Wonderful book. Wonderful book. As a matter of fact, a coworker you and I worked with introduced me to this book. And so going back to the being distracted and not realizing it, one of the things in there talked about intimacy with adults. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
you have a television in your bedroom and you're intimate with your partner, but your whole attention may not be on the partner. It may be,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're talking about something I'm interested in, or it's the distraction. And so, really, the tip that I would have for anybody is just be intentional with your
Mm-hmm.
focus. You can be looking at someone and walk out of the room and not have a clue what they just told you
Yeah.
face to face. And so really be intentional. It's okay to say, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Would you repeat that?
Mm-hmm.
And then just make sure, just like that paragraph you're reading, just make sure you're comprehending what was communicated and what your next step is. And I think that goes back to the list. You break things down
Mm-hmm.
into smaller parts and they're more manageable. I think sometimes when multitasking, even though we may be good at it, sometimes it's hard for us, or for me personally.
Yeah, and I've learned I'm having to do it more and more to stop trying to multitask because we kind of there was this wave probably 10, 15 years ago of multitask. You can get a lot accomplished, and then people start realizing actually you're not very
You can get
focused
a
when you're
lot of
trying
partial things
to
accomplished.
when you're trying to do so many things. And so I'm learning more and more. um hey, let me focus on this one thing and then do this next thing, because
Hmm.
the more I was trying to go in and out of everything, I was like, wait, did I
Hmm.
did I do? And I still, for some things I really can jump in and out, and other things I go, yeah, you're not as good at that as
Hmm.
you thought you were.
Hmm.
So focus, complete it, and then go to something else.
Well, and that's helpful. Recognizing, like I said, as a kid, it's like, sit down, don't do that.
Hmm.
And I don't mean to be like old school, but mine was curiosity. I had a kindergarten teacher who was, other kids were doing something. I'm looking at a pencil. I'm just curious. And again, full name. If you break that pencil, I'm going to send you to the office. And again, 70s for paddling.
Hmm.
And so I had like the fear of God in me. I was like, oh, I can't break this pencil. But my restlessness, my impulsivity, I was just looking at it and I broke it. You would have thought that I was
Mm.
getting ready to be buried under the jail. I mean, I was like, and it was scary because I got sent to the principal's office. Principal didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
And then I got to come back to the class, but I internalized, oh, I'm bad.
Hmm.
And I really think that, if someone is having some self doubt as an adult and it's, you know, you can trace it back to a pattern as a child, I would definitely say talk to a medical professional. Start with your
Hmm.
primary care. If you do see a therapist, talk with the therapist about it and y'all kind of tease it out. I diagnosed an older woman, um, that the person who had was 60, I think
Hmm.
is okay. Okay. I again, the symptoms are unique to the person. There's overall,
Yeah.
criteria, but what might have been seen as anxiety, or, if you're a parent and you have an adult child who's having trouble, you may be multitasking and managing,
Hmm.
and just not realize what is going on. When I got the diagnosis, it helped me help others. That's why I share
Hmm.
that I have ADHD. Clients I work with, I tell them, I said, I'm talkative. And that was another thing put on my report card. But I'm also, you know, I'm embracing what works for me. And that's why, when I can't remember everything I've ever learned, but I can tell you where to go to
Yeah.
find the answer. And so feeling kind of organized and knowing there's a resource in the event that I need it, that's been very helpful too.
Tammy, you said something that sparked a question for me.
Okay.
When some people kind of having that diagnosis is a sigh of relief for them because it starts to make sense. The things that maybe they've internalized as
Hmm.
something's wrong with me, they start to go, oh no, my brain just functions differently. For other people, they see it almost as a crutch or an excuse to, oh, I have
Hmm.
ADHD, so I can't do that. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, I can't. Sorry, I couldn't get that. I couldn't do that. I have ADHD, and it's almost a
Hmm.
crutch, right? How is it good for people if they go, I think I have it, but I don't know if I even should I get a should I go and try to get a formal diagnosis? Is it helpful? Is it hurtful? At what point do you say you should definitely go get tested as an adult?
Well, it depends, because through the years and having diagnosed many people, I've also had to work with them on their self confidence. It's, you're not broken.
Right.
This doesn't
I think
change
that's huge.
who you are. And even with working with adolescents, sometimes it's when they recognize that, it does take some of the negative stigma
Hmm.
away from it. And you said that, some people may see it as as a helpful piece. Some people may see it as a crutch. Well, other people may see it as, just I'm
Just
something's wrong.
information.
I'm
Right.
dysfunctional. And
Mm-hmm.
let me just say this. There there is some sense of dysfunction, because someone with ADHD may not look like exactly like someone else that doesn't have ADHD in
Hmm.
a classroom or in an office or in a family. Like I said, my husband and son and I are all three ADHD, but it manifests differently in those situations. So I I'm a ADHD advocate, for lack of a better term, because I think the more you understand, the more you recognize, oh, this is why. And it's not an excuse,
Hmm.
but if you understand it, then you can change it if it's, interfering. And
Yeah.
there was one, I have so many resources, but I don't want to sit and go through all of them. But this is another one. This is for kids. I'll tell you the author. It's ADHD 102 Practical Strategies for Reducing the Deficit. Well,
Okay. I'm
in
gonna
this
try to
book,
type that in the comments.
and I can always, you can always post this. I can give you all the things that I've referenced. But in this book, one, it it was probably one of the things that helped me help others more than anything, is because it talked about the neurological piece.
Mm.
And, please don't quote me on this, but it's basically in this book is the neurons. And
Mhm.
whereas in a person without ADHD, their neuron on this side may tell this side of the brain to do something. Okay, no problem.
Mhm.
Well, if an ADHD person is in that same situation, that signal may not fire. And again, I can't speak
Mhm.
to the medical piece of this. You need to talk to a physician as far as any kind of medication, but recognizing, okay, oh, well, they got the instructions. I didn't get them. Doesn't mean, oh, well, I didn't hear them. Excuse. It means something
Something
interfered in my
happened.
ability to take that information in. So when I tell people this, it's pretty much okay, your brain's different. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's better, worse, bad, good. It's different and you process things different. And if you can embrace that, then you can use this to help define the you that you want to be.
Mhm. So I know this is helpful. Shavandra in the comments said, "Jesus, this is helpful." So Shavandra, share some of the things that feel very helpful for you. I want you guys to tag and share people that um, you know could benefit from this broadcast as we're going along. Um, can you talk a little bit more about, um, I guess, the relationship piece? We've kind of talked about parenting and how that can it took your child being diagnosed for you to go,
My
oh
husband
wait,
as well. He he wasn't diagnosed until he was an adult. And
right. So
his
can you talk
mother
about
was an
how it shows up in
RN.
romantic relationships?
Yes, his mother was an RN, and so but for my husband, he was in sports. And growing up in sports, he was involved where he got that action out. I did
Mm-hmm.
sports. And so as a child, I got a lot of my energy out doing gymnastics. Like I said, I would do
Mm-hmm.
back handsprings down the hallways. And at school, I would do that when it was appropriate in high school, like at a basketball game or something like that. But what I have noticed is if you don't have a way, a vessel to get that restlessness out, because in a kid, they're jumping and they're getting their energy out. Well, adults may not jump on the couch,
Right.
but they may. It. I use the analogy of a hamster in a cage running on a wheel. They're moving,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not making progress. They're not going somewhere. If the goal is to spin the wheel, then they got it. But if their goal is, I'm going to do this to have an outcome, well, if that wheel is running, it's yet another distraction.
Yeah.
So that's, you have to figure out, okay, am I focused? If I'm not, what are some things that I can do? And there's some, and I'm not going to go into all the clinical interventions and things like that. But there's some grounding techniques that people can use that, they may work in depression and anxiety and trauma, but they also can work in ADHD. It gets you focused, it gets you present in the here and now. And so it kind of pulls you out of your head.
Okay. So using some grounding techniques. One of the grounding techniques that I've taught for years is basically getting people out, like you said, out of their head and just teaching them. So I tell them to use all of their senses.
Grounding with
The
senses.
five,
Yes.
4, 3, 2, 1. So you look and you find 5 things you can see in your environment. What are you
Absolutely.
doing? Literally getting out of your head and you're going, oh, I see this bookshelf over here to my right, and I look in front of me, and there is a doll in front of me, and
Absolutely, and
I
that
look
puts you
here and I
present in that room,
right.
and I
Um,
would do that with clients as well. They'd be in the room and they're like, "This is silly." I'm like, "Well," and I would go through the 5 senses, and then I'd ask them, "Okay, are you still thinking about that trauma? Are you still thinking about that project? Are you still," and they're like, "No." So it is
yeah.
very helpful, and something you didn't ask, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. Um, Actually, you may have asked it, is the treatment, some treatment, it's not cookie cutter. Find a
Mm,
therapist that works for you. And for me, you know, I had to figure out, okay, this is my priority. I'm focusing on me and what are some skills that I can learn. And once you do that, the the level of comfort helps. Your self-confidence goes up and you feel
Hmm.
more in control, which in turn may help you manage some of those symptoms.
Okay. We have another question that says, what were the symptoms that the medication helped to correct? So for you personally, you said once I started my medicine, it really helped
Okay.
with these symptoms.
And yes, 100%. And just FYI for anybody watching, I have taken my medicine today. So it doesn't just zap things away. For me and for a couple of the medical professionals that I've worked with for years, you have to look at what works for you. I know I sound like a broken record, but um, for me, I think it again, don't know if it's coming after the surgery or if it's now. I mean, if it's just natural,
Hmm.
but what works for me is really settling in, stopping. And it just happened, Nitra. The question just went, will you repeat that last question?
Yes, absolutely. What were
That's
the
perfect.
symptoms that medication
Got it.
helped to
Got it.
correct? So it could have
Okay.
been I used to be distracted. Now I
Yes.
can da da da.
Yes. That's one of them. It's the if I know I've got, I mean, I take my medication daily because, you have some people that just take it during the work week or during the
Hmm.
school week. Well, when that medication gets out of your body, and I had a psychiatrist that I worked with tell me this, well, when it gets out of your system, then you have to restart. I
Hmm.
figured that out with my son's psychiatrist who prescribed the medication because when he would go to school, Mondays and Tuesdays were bad. I mean, he wasn't a bad kid. He just had bad
Hmm.
days. And he didn't have that reserve. And again, you'll have to talk to a medical professional about that. So focus helps. If I know I feel I'm reading or I'm doing a paper for school or I'm doing a project for work, it does help with the focus. It doesn't take away a distraction, but it takes my focus away from the
Hmm.
distraction, if that makes sense. Um, it doesn't bother me as much. And one of the biggest ones, and I'm going to end on this, is that low tolerance to frustration. And so a lot of people don't realize that's one of the components of it. And like I said, I was strong willed and
Hmm.
still am. But if I haven't had my medication, I am more emotionally impulsive. And
Hmm.
so, with that being said, you were talking about the relationships. Well, if I'm reacting, what feels right to me may look like an overreaction to my husband or
Hmm.
my son, or, even with the inattentive part, it's the mom, I told you this yesterday. Well, that's why I have to stop. And even with my son, he will be 18 within a month. And I say, put your eyes on me. Look at me. Because I want to know that he's there. Doesn't mean he
Hmm.
was always present. He might have
Yeah.
been thinking about something else. But yes, it just helps manage the symptoms where the symptoms don't become too overwhelming.
I think that was what you brought out was that relationship piece, even in relationships, because people often do those things. I'll make a list at work, but at home, they kind of think, oh, it's okay.
It's
Well, if
my
your
time to
child or
relax.
your husband or whoever is telling you things that, hey, mom, don't forget this. Hey, dad, don't forget this. Or honey, don't forget
Yes.
this. And you don't write it down, that can cause problems because they can believe that that means you don't care about them or whatever. And so
And we
learning how
can,
to
yes.
say, hey, let me write that down. What time is that meeting for the kids? Whatever. Let me write that
Mhm.
down. Let me put it in my calendar. Can you send me a reminder? Doing those things can help keep things a lot smoother. Did you pay that bill?
Well,
Oh,
and
crap. Let's do it on automatic withdrawal. Go ahead.
the calendar is huge, um,
Hmm.
because, I'm have an appointment for my son, have an appointment for myself, have to be in a meeting, and doing that. And just again, with the calendar, color coded. My kid has a color. My doctor's appointments have a color.
Mm,
So I can look at the calendar and realize, oh, I've got a doctor's appointment coming up, or,
yeah,
oh, this is something for my son. And whether it's, going to a dance or a
yeah.
date or whatever, it's very helpful being organized because it really overwhelms you when you're not.
No,
And
so go ahead.
living with people who may function differently than you,
Hmm.
they've got to do what works for them. It doesn't have to it can't be all about what works for mom or wife or Tammy the
Yeah.
person.
So thank you so much, Tammy. We are at an hour. I think people over in the comments are letting us know that they really learned and grew a lot from
Oh,
this.
thank
If
you.
you guys have any further questions, let me know. I will try to answer them. You can put them in the comment section. I usually go back and um,
I'll be
if
happy
you have
to
questions
if we
that
didn't get
that we
to
can
them,
do.
I'll be happy to give you some feedback on those particular questions.
Thank you so much. So
You're
everybody give it up
welcome.
for Tammy. I appreciate you. Tammy was super helpful for me when I was a newer therapist coming into the field. So again, I appreciate you. I've been doing this now for like 17 years, I think.
Yeah, you weren't far behind me.
17, 8, somewhere in there. So again, I appreciate you for taking your time to come on the show, bringing not only your professional experience but your personal experience, because people need to see, um, hey, this is not a character flaw. This is
Right.
something that can totally, hey, maybe my brain is working differently, but I can still be very successful. I
Mhm.
can still um, do the things that need to be done to
Yeah.
help others and to help myself. And so you gave some really cool
And that's part of the reason
strategy.
I'm so transparent is because, I may not share all of this with someone, but as a therapist, I have life experience
Hmm.
that's unique to me. And then there's research. So a lot of times I'm merging my own life experience
Oh,
as
absolutely.
well as, the research and the data and the
Do you
symptoms.
find that clients who have ADHD, when they find out you have it, that they are calmer? Does it seem to help?
I, just off the top of my head, yes, I think it helps. Um, could it deter someone? Possibly, but the therapeutic relationship is the number one thing
Hmm.
that is going to lead to positive outcomes. If there's a positive connection and relationship, fine. So when I do that, I tell them this is part of me. It's not all of me, and I have
Hmm.
other pieces of me, but I want to lead by example, and I don't want someone to feel like they're broken or
Right.
they're dysfunctional.
Hmm.
So,
So thank you so much. I saw the question a couple times. Well, how do I get diagnosed, or how do I, and so again, one of the things
primary care.
that Tammy and I were both sharing, go seek help from your primary care physician. They can do some examinations or refer you to someone. Speaking to a mental health professional like either of us, that can then help you to walk through some of the practical things that you can do, and even emotional unraveling of maybe some of the impact of not being diagnosed for so long. Um, that can bring a lot of anxiety if you were the kid who got in trouble a lot. It can bring a lot of low confidence if you were the
Mhm,
kid who they kept saying, "Why can't you focus? Why can't you do?" And you start to, like she was saying, like you
mhm.
feel like you're broken, and so
Well, and
unraveling
that's
a lot of that.
100%, and I'm gonna use the word ignorance. It doesn't mean people are stupid, but it means they aren't aware, they don't understand or know. So it may look like a kid or an adult that is not interested, and, just for each person, don't jump to conclusions and
Hmm.
think everybody's cookie cutter. There could be something
Yeah,
that is impacting their functioning, but do they get to the end result?
yeah.
If you do, then you're successful.
Right. Kudos to you. So, again, thank you. Everybody give a shout out, give hearts, give fire, give love, share this broadcast. Join me back here next week, next Thursday, for Minding My Mental Health. Again, every week we are bringing guests, or I'm here by myself bringing a specific topic, but we're always trying to not only tear down the stigma of receiving mental health treatment, but bring awareness to our community about various topics concerning our mental health. So, thank you guys so much for joining. I will see you back. Oh, one announcement. If you are in corporate America, give me a one if you're in corporate America. Um, I am hosting or co-facilitating actually with Keyshawn Robinson Henry, who is a senior director in Walmart corporate. And we're talking about she's talking about building your corporate brand, and I'm bringing in the mental health piece about keeping your sanity as you are going up the corporate ladder. And she's going to talk about how you can build that brand to help
Hmm.
you to succeed, but also, again, keep your sanity throughout all of the stress of that. And so we are doing a master class next month. If you want to be a part of that, let me know. I can send you the link to register. I'm really excited. Keyshawn's awesome. If you guys have been watching, you've actually seen Keyshawn on one of the broadcasts, and we talked about corporate and corporately how you handle your mental health if you're in the corporate environment. So again, sign up for that class. I promise you it's going to be the bomb. It's going to be awesome. Keyshawn's dope. I'm going to bring my knowledge and
I was
expertise
going to
to
say
the
you're
field
you're
as
dope
well.
too.
I'm pretty dope as well. So you don't want to miss that. Register. I think that is the beginning of next month. So again, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Tammy. And I will see you all back here next Thursday. I'll see you later. Bye bye.